going to make pizza. We're going to use 1 cup of whole wheat, 2 cups of white flour, and that's just about perfect. Measure it pretty carefully. Level off the top so it's just about right. That's a half cup. That's 1 cup. Then we get the white flour. We're going to use 2 cups. Again, level it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm taking a little more, just extra, put it into this extra container I've got. You can put a little bit of salt in the mix, slowing down the yeast, which is good, makes it ferment a little better. I just use these plastic containers with a lid. We're just going to coat it with a little olive oil so it won't stick. So olive oil and just a little bit. Get a little packet. This is the active dry yeast. For this amount, you only really need a half, so I'm going to take half and save it. But it's like a little bit more than a teaspoon, I find. So here's the yeast, and I'm going to just throw this into the other pot like that. Then we'll just fold this carefully, and then I'm going to just put this back in the refrigerator for next time. We need to get some warm water. The yeast doesn't like cold water. So take this water here, and then just pour it in maybe a cup or so. Ultimately, we want exactly 12 ounces, a cup and a half. So I have about a cup here of the sort of hot water. Then I'm going to put in the tap water, which is, in our case, filtered water. And then at a certain point, you put your finger in there, but make sure you put enough cold water. It still feels a little hot. Add a little bit more. Still a little hot. Just a little bit more. Alright, that's great. The yeast will love this. So I look at it, I have about 16 ounces. I got to pour it off until I have 12 ounces. So here precision matters. And I've got it just right. You can't see that because it's a little bit wavy, but it's just right. So I'm going to pour this over the yeast. Basically, since we've measured this precisely, I know in advance that 12 ounces of water and the 3 cups of flour is going to work out just right. And then you just kind of stir this flour in. And this mix will get quite stiff. It's not like making pancakes. So don't start panicking. Don't start adding more water by any means. So the whole thing is kind of like this lumpy, wet ball. And what we're going to do is take some of our extra flour and put quite a bit of it down here on the board. You dump this lump onto the flour so it doesn't stick. And remember, this is the good stuff on the bowl. You don't want to lose that, so you scrape it all out if you can, right on top of your dough. This is what you're going to be kneading. And all kneading means is somehow stretching the dough. That's the main idea, stretching it. Basically, you take this thing and flip it over. You just flip it over. That's 1, 2, 3. And then once you start doing this, it starts getting into a more cohesive entity. And it's picking up a little bit of flour, so it's not quite so sticky. But you want to keep it just at the threshold of stickiness. So if it starts sticking to the wood in your hands too much, it's a little bit too wet, but you don't want to get it too dry. So you want to keep it as sticky as possible. Now, we're going to turn it over and press it down like this about, I don't know, 80 to 100 times. And before we start doing that, we've done it about 4 or 5 times. When you read about kneading, they always tell you take your your hands and you press it down like this and then pull it over. And they make a big deal about pressing it as though that's what's stretching it. That's not what's stretching it. That's just making a little crease in the middle. What's stretching it is actually bending it over. And this curvature over here is what's stretching the dough. So don't get hung up on the technique. All you want to do is press it down so that you get a little crease in the middle that allows you to stretch it by bending it. So I'm going to just quickly do, say, 80 to 100. I'll count it. You don't really have to, but we're at about 5 or 6, so this is 7, 8, 9, and I'm going to start counting to myself. And probably, as we get to about 20, put the video into fast motion so you don't have to watch all of it. So slow it down again. We're at about halfway point in the 40s, and you can see that the dough is getting really nice and pliable, and it's just got a nice feeling, and it'll get even slightly better. And let's do the last half then. Alright, I mean, I don't remember how many I've done, but it's a lot. And the dough is just like really beautiful. Some people say you can kind of stick your finger in, and then if it kind of pops back out, it's sort of ready. I think it's sort of ready. You can kind of feel it. It's still a little sticky, which is good. And you just kind of pop it into a bowl like this. If you don't have the patience, you can just let it rise on the table at room temperature for 2 hours. But if you put it in the refrigerator for 3 days, the yeast gets a chance to ferment slowly, and it just brings out more of the flavors. It's much more delicious. So I recommend 3 days, plan in advance, and we'll find a little spot in our refrigerator and then mark on our calendar for 3 days. Okay, here we are again. So back to the refrigerator and extract the pizza. Take a look. And now all we're going to do is punch it down and let it rise again for 2 hours at room temperature. Here's the stuff, and you can see it's turned into whatever it turns into. It's no longer that nice little ball, but it's expanded a little bit. I'm going to just put a little bit of flour up on the top and a little bit of flour on the board. Spread it around a little bit, and then take it out, and this is what it is. So put it down here, and if there's anything left in this, just kind of scrape it out, put it back on top. Then punching down really is just kind of punching down like this. You know, you just spread it out a little bit on the board. Olive oil again. Just a really tiny amount. Again, so it doesn't stick as much. 1. The reason there are 4, of course, is that we're going to be making 4 individual sized pizzas. This is kind of punched down. Get a knife, any kind will do, and I'm going to cut it into quarters by cutting it in half, and then cutting the halves in half. And to the extent that you do this equally, you'll have equal sized pizzas. Otherwise you won't. It's no big deal. Then I kind of fold it over a couple of times, sort of like kneading it, and but not much. And then I get it into this kind of a little ball. You want to get all the air out of it. You don't want air bubbles in it. And then at the edges you kind of squeeze it so that there's no obvious imperfections. And then just take these containers and put it in, and take the top and put the top on, and you're done. Number 4. I can tell that some are bigger than the others. If I do this right and remember, I'll take the big ones. give the small ones away to someone else. Let them sit here for 2 hours. Okay, so here are the 4, and I'm going to just arbitrarily choose 1 to make, and the rest go in the freezer. Here's what it looks like. It's gotten a little bit bigger than before. Here's our flour. Put a little bit on a cutting board. And as before, you just gently loosen this up so it comes out. Dump it on the cutting board. And it's got this wonderful little texture here, and we're just going to sort of punch it down again until it is just about like this. Now you can't make the pizza like this. You have to sort of take it in your hands. And what I do is I just kind of gently pull it apart and rotate it. And the weight of gravity just stretches it a little bit. So I just keep going around in circles, squeezing the edges. It doesn't have to be round. In fact, it won't be round. And it can get pretty thin. And what I've got here is a silicone baking something. But you can just put this on a baking pan if you prefer, with a little flour. This makes it a little bit easier. So after it gets about like this, you just put it down on this baking pad, which is rated to be cooked at up to 550 degrees, which is the maximum that my oven can be set to, and you want to cook it at the highest temperature you can. And I'm just going to put the silicone, which you could also use parchment paper. This is a pizza stone, which is not necessary, but since I have one, I'm going to use it. Looks like this, and so you can see it there sitting in the oven. Get some ingredients, and I've got some fresh mozzarella in here, which I keep in water, some Kalamata olives, some homemade tomato sauce, I didn't make it, and an onion. But at this point, you know, it's sort of a bit arbitrary. It's whatever you like. Okay, so here are our lovely ingredients, all on the cutting board, and it's not 550, but it's getting there. So let's make the pizza. Tomato sauce. And put a bit of it on it, and then just, you know, you've all seen the pizza guys do this, so you know how to do this. I like it a little bit hotter, so I'm going to add some pepper flakes, so some olives, some onion, finally the cheese. So you just kind of distribute it evenly, and again, you can use any form of mozzarella, grated mozzarella, dried mozzarella, fresh mozzarella, it doesn't matter, or none at all. There we go. Now, getting it in the oven, if you're a little bit shaky with your hands, I would definitely recommend using some sort of a pad to protect you from being burnt. This is acting like a peel, and I'm going to just use my hands and get it off the cutting board and onto the pizza stone. So here it goes. And then I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes. Do not use your hands. Use one of these mitts, because the silicone stays hot. So I'm going to turn this off, and then what I'm going to do is use this cutting board as a reverse peel, and just pull this right onto the cutting board, And then what you will see, if I can get this to work, is that pizza should slide off pretty easily. And the silicone, which is very hot, I'm going to just put in the sink. Here's the pizza. Here's the pizza cutting implement. And we're going to just cut it into 6 pieces. And it looks delicious. So this is where the video ends, and this is where I start eating.